The first time I saw Julian Torres, he was laughing so hard he nearly fell off the lecture hall steps, his sharp wit slicing through the air like a blade. I was 18, a freshman at Haverford College, Pennsylvania, clutching my worn-out backpack, my heart pounding with the weight of being the only black kid in a sea of unfamiliar faces. By the end of that semester, Julian would become the architect of my misery, but I never imagined he'd also become my salvation. I'm Marcus Wells, now 28, a graphic designer with a penchant for late-night jazz, and a husband who makes my mornings brighter than I ever thought possible. But back in college, I was just a kid from Philly, trying to carve out a place in a world that felt too big, too white, too everything. Haverford was supposed to be my fresh start, a liberal arts haven where I could finally be myself. A gay black man with dreams bigger than the row house I grew up in. Instead, it became a battlefield, and Julian was the general of my torment. It started in Intro to Sociology, a class I loved for its promise of understanding people, systems, the world. Julian, a sophomore with a swagger that screamed privilege, sat 3 rows ahead, his dark hair always a little messy, his hazel eyes glinting with mischief. He was Puerto Rican, born and raised in Miami, with a charm that could light up a room or burn it down, depending on his mood. Everyone gravitated toward him, professors, classmates, even the cafeteria staff. But to me, he was a storm cloud, and I was the fool who didn't see the lightning coming. The first strike came during a group project. Our professor paired us to research systemic inequality, a topic I lived and breathed. I poured my heart into our presentation, weaving in stories of my neighborhood, where redlining and police patrols were as common as corner stores. Julian, however, had other plans. He showed up to our meetings late, if at all, tossing out half-baked ideas and smirking when I tried to steer us back on track. "Relax, Marcus," he'd say, his voice dripping with condescension. "It's just a grade." But it wasn't just a grade to me, it was my shot to prove I belonged. The night before our presentation, Julian rewrote my slides without telling me. He replaced my personal anecdotes with generic stats and flashy graphics, turning our project into a soulless PowerPoint that could have come from a corporate boardroom. When I confronted him, he shrugged. "Your stories were too heavy, man. Nobody wants to hear about your sad little life." His words hit like a punch, and I stood there, frozen, as he walked away, leaving me to present his version of our work. We got an A, but I felt like I'd lost something bigger. My voice, my place, my courage. From then on, Julian became my shadow, always there to undermine me. In class debates, he'd counter my points with a smirk, twisting my words until I sounded naive. At parties, he'd jokingly call me out for being too serious, too sensitive, too much. His friends laughed, and I shrank, my confidence eroding with every jab. By sophomore year, I dreaded seeing him, his presence a reminder that I wasn't enough. But there was something else beneath the surface, something I didn't understand then. Sometimes, I'd catch Julian watching me, his eyes lingering a beat too long, his smirk softening into something unreadable. Once, during a late-night study session in the library, he slid a coffee across the table to me, muttering, "You look like you need it." I brushed it off, assuming it was another game. I didn't know then that Julian was fighting a war of his own, one he wasn't ready to admit. By junior year, things escalated. I'd come out to a few friends, testing the waters of my identity in a place that preached acceptance but didn't always deliver. Word spread, as it does in small colleges, and Julian's taunts grew sharper, more personal. One night, at a campus bar, he cornered me, his breath heavy with beer. "So, Marcus, you're out now, huh? Guess that explains why you're so uptight." His friends snickered, but his eyes held something darker, Anger? Maybe? Or something he couldn't name. I pushed past him, my heart racing, vowing to avoid him at all costs. But Haverford was small, and avoidance was impossible. Our paths crossed in classes, at events, in the dining hall where I'd see him holding court. His charisma a magnet for everyone but me. I started to wonder if I was the problem, if my existence somehow provoked him. I threw myself into my art, sketching late into the night, trying to draw a world where I wasn't invisible. My sketchbook became my refuge, filled with portraits of people I admired. Strong, unapologetic, free. One night, I drew Julian, capturing the sharp angle of his jaw, the intensity in his eyes. I hated that I saw beauty in him, hated that I couldn't hate him completely. Then came the spring of our senior year, a turning point neither of us saw coming. It was April, the air thick with the scent of blooming dogwoods, and Haverford was hosting its annual Diversity Week. I'd been roped into organizing an open mic night, a space for students to share stories of identity, struggle, and hope. I poured everything into it, determined to create something meaningful. When the night arrived, the auditorium was packed, the energy electric. I stepped up to the mic, my palms sweaty, and shared a poem about growing up black and gay in a world that tried to erase me. The room was silent, then erupted in applause. For the first time, I felt seen. Afterward, as I gathered my things, Julian approached me. No smirk, no entourage. Just him, looking smaller than I'd ever seen. "That was real," he said, his voice low. "I didn't know." I braced for a jab, but none came. Instead, he looked at me like he was seeing me for the first time. "Can we talk?" he asked. I wanted to say no, to walk away from the person who'd made my college years hell. But something in his eyes, raw, unguarded, made me stay. We walked to a quiet corner of the quad, the campus bathed in moonlight. Julian sat on a bench, his hands fidgeting, and started talking. He told me about his life in Miami, growing up in a family where being gay wasn't an option, where machismo was a cage he couldn't escape. He'd known he was gay since high school but buried it, terrified of what it meant. At Haverford he saw me, out proud, unapologetic, and it scared him. My courage mirrored his fear, and he lashed out to keep his own truth at bay. "I was a coward," he said, his voice breaking, "and I hurt you because I couldn't face myself. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to scream, to unload years of pain. But another part saw a man unraveling, his walls crumbling under the weight of his own regret. I sat beside him, silent, as he continued. He'd been watching me all along, not just to torment me, but because he envied me. My art, my voice, my refusal to disappear. "You were everything I wanted to be," he whispered, "and I hated you for it." That night, something shifted. I didn't forgive him, not yet, but I saw him differently. Not as the villain of my story, but as a man trapped in his own. We didn't become friends overnight, but we started talking. Small conversations at first, then longer ones over coffee or late-night walks. Julian was funny when he wasn't trying to be cruel, thoughtful when he let his guard down. I learned he loved salsa music, that he dreamed of opening a community center for queer Latinx youth, that he carried the same weight of expectations I did, just in a different way. By graduation, we were something undefined. Not enemies, not quite friends, but tethered by a fragile understanding. When we walked across the stage, I caught his eye, and he smiled, a real smile, not the smirk I'd grown to dread. I didn't know then that our story was just beginning, that the boy who'd been my nightmare would one day be my home. But as I packed my bags and left Haverford, I felt a spark of something new. Hope. 3 years after graduation, Philadelphia was my proving ground. I'd landed a job at a small design firm, turning my sketches into vibrant branding for local businesses. My life was full, friends, late-night jam sessions, a tiny apartment with a view of the Schuylkill River. But something was missing, a piece I couldn't name. Then, on a chilly October evening, Julian Torres walked back into my life, and the world tilted. I was at the Blue Note, a jazz club in Fishtown, sketching the saxophonist's silhouette as the music wove through the smoky air. The crowd was small, the vibe intimate, when I felt a presence beside me. "Still drawing the world as you see it, huh?" His voice was unmistakable, smooth and warm, like a song I tried to forget. I looked up, and there was Julian, older but still magnetic, his hazel eyes softer than I remembered. He wore a crimson button-up, sleeves rolled to his elbows, and a nervous smile that didn't match the cocky sophomore I'd known. "What are you doing here?" I asked, my guard up. He slid into the seat across from me, uninvited but not unwelcome. "I moved to Philly last month," he said, "working at a nonprofit for queer youth. Saw your name on a mural downtown and I don't know, I had to find you." My heart stuttered. The mural was my pride, a colorful tribute to Philly's black and queer communities, painted on a community center wall. That he'd seen it, sought me out, felt like fate or a trap. We talked over whiskey and jazz, the music filling the gaps when words failed. He told me about his life post-Haverford, coming out to his family, the fallout, the slow rebuild. His parents had cut him off for a year, but he'd found purpose in advocacy, helping kids like him navigate their truths. I shared my own journey, building a career, finding a chosen family, learning to love myself despite the scars of college. We didn't mention those years directly, but they hung between us, heavy and unspoken. When the club closed, we walked along the river, the city lights shimmering on the water. Julian stopped, his breath visible in the cold air. "I owe you an apology, Marcus. A real one." I froze, caught off guard. He looked at me, his eyes raw. "I was awful to you. I was scared, and I took it out on you because you were so fearless. I'm sorry." His voice cracked, and I saw the boy from the quad that night, vulnerable and searching. I could have walked away, let the past stay buried. But something in me softened. "I hated you," I admitted. "But I saw you too, the real you hiding." He laughed, a shaky sound, and we stood there, two men carrying the weight of who we'd been, trying to figure out who we could be. Before we parted, he asked for my number. I gave it to him, not sure why, but feeling the spark from graduation flare brighter. Over the next few weeks, Julian became a constant. Coffee dates turned into long dinners, then weekend hikes in Wissahickon Park. He was different now, thoughtful, earnest, his humor warm instead of cutting. I learned he loved to cook, his abuelita's arroz con pollo recipe a point of pride. He'd bring Tupperware to my apartment, insisting I try his latest attempt, and we'd laugh over my terrible attempts to help. Slowly, I let him in, my walls crumbling as I saw the man he'd become. But trust was hard. One night, over takeout in my living room, I asked the question that had haunted me. "Why me, Julian? Why did you make my life hell?" He set down his chopsticks, his face tight with shame. "You were everything I couldn't be," he said. "Out proud, talented. I was jealous, and I was terrified of what I felt when I looked at you." His words hit deep, stirring something I hadn't admitted to myself. I'd felt something too, even then, buried under the pain. That night he kissed me. It was tentative, a question more than a statement, and I answered by pulling him closer. The kiss was fire and forgiveness, a collision of past and present. But as we pulled apart, doubt crept in. Could I love the man who'd once broken me? Could he love me without the shadow of guilt? We took it slow, navigating the messy terrain of our history. Julian was patient, showing up with small gestures. A playlist of my favorite jazz. A sketchbook he'd bought because it reminded him of me. I started to see the world through his eyes, one where vulnerability was strength, where love could heal old wounds. But the past wasn't done with us. At a gallery opening for my latest project, a mutual college friend spotted us together and laughed. Marcus and Julian? No way. You two hated each other. The comment stung, a reminder of the chasm we were trying to bridge. I pulled away after that, scared of falling too deep. Julian noticed, giving me space but leaving voicemails that broke my heart. "I'm not that guy anymore, Marcus," he said in one, his voice thick with emotion. "But I get it if you can't trust me. Just don't disappear." I listened to that message on repeat, torn between fear and the pull of something real. One rainy afternoon, I found myself at his apartment, soaked and unsure. He opened the door, surprise flickering across his face. "I don't know if I can do this," I said, my voice raw. "But I want to try." He pulled me inside, wrapping me in a blanket, and we talked until dawn. About college, about pain, about the future. By morning, I knew I was falling for him. Not the boy who'd hurt me, but the man who was fighting to be better. Falling in love with Julian was like painting on a canvas that had been torn and stitched back together. Beautiful but fragile. By the spring of our first year together, we were a couple, navigating the rhythm of a relationship that felt both new and heavy with history. Philadelphia became our backdrop, its gritty charm and vibrant communities mirroring our own journey of rebuilding. We moved in together in a small loft in Old City, a space filled with my art and Julian's eclectic record collection. Mornings were my favorite. Julian humming salsa tunes while making coffee, me sketching at the kitchen table, stealing glances at the man who'd once been my enemy. But love didn't erase the past. Sometimes, in quiet moments, I'd remember his sharp words from college, and doubt would creep in. Was this real, or was I setting myself up to be hurt again? Julian sensed my hesitation. He never pushed, but he showed up, every day in ways that mattered. He'd leave notes in my sketchbook, simple things like, "You make the world brighter," or "I'm lucky to have you." He started volunteering with me at a local queer youth center, where I led art workshops and he mentored teens navigating their identities. Watching him with those kids, patient, open, vulnerable, made me see the depth of his transformation. He wasn't just apologizing for the past. He was living his amends. One day, we were asked to co-lead a mural project for the center, a celebration of queer resilience. We stood side by side, paintbrushes in hand, designing a vibrant collage of faces, colors, and stories. As we worked, Julian opened up about his own struggles, how he'd spent years hiding his sexuality, how his father's rejection still stung, how he'd used cruelty to mask his fear. "I was drowning back then," he said, his brush pausing mid-stroke. "You were the first person who made me want to swim." His words hit me hard. I'd always seen myself as the victim in our story, but now I saw his side. The fear, the shame, the longing he couldn't name. I reached for his hand, paint smudging between our fingers, and said, "We're both swimming now." He smiled, and in that moment I knew I loved him. Not just the man he was, but the man he was fighting to be. But love, even the truest kind, isn't immune to storms. That summer, Julian got a job offer in Chicago, a dream role leading a national queer advocacy program. It was everything he'd worked for, a chance to make a difference on a bigger scale. He was thrilled, but I saw the hesitation in his eyes when he told me. "It's only a year," he said, his voice pleading. "We can do long distance, right?" My heart sank. I'd built my life in Philly, my career, my community. The idea of him leaving felt like losing a piece of myself. We argued for the first time, our voices echoing in the loft. I accused him of prioritizing his career over us. He accused me of not trusting him to come back. The fight ended with me storming out, walking the city streets until midnight, my mind a tangle of fear and love. When I returned, Julian was sitting on the couch, his face streaked with tears. "I won't go if it means losing you," he said. "You're my home, Marcus." I sat beside him, my own eyes burning. "I don't want to hold you back," I whispered. "But I'm scared." We decided he'd take the job, but we'd make it work. Long distance was brutal. Missed calls, lonely nights, the ache of wanting him close. But we fought for it. Weekly video dates, care packages filled with his terrible cookies and my sketches, long letters about our dreams. I flew to Chicago for his birthday, and we spent the weekend exploring the city, laughing like we were back in college, but better. In those moments, I believed we could survive anything. Then came the call that changed everything. It was late August, and I was in my studio working on a commission. Julian's name lit up my phone, his voice frantic. "My dad had a heart attack," he said. "I'm flying to Miami tomorrow." I booked a ticket to join him, not caring about the cost. When I arrived, Julian was a wreck, his usual confidence replaced by a quiet fear. His father was stable but weak, and their relationship was still strained. I held his hand through hospital visits, sat with him through tense family dinners, and listened as he poured out years of pain. One night, in his childhood bedroom, Julian broke down. "I thought I'd moved past this," he said, his voice muffled against my shoulder. "But seeing him like this, I just want him to love me." I held him, my own heart aching, and realized how far we'd come. The boy who'd tormented me was now the man I'd fight for, no matter the cost. "He will," I said. "And if he doesn't, you've got me." Miami was a crucible, testing the strength of our love against the weight of Julian's past. His father's recovery was slow, and every hospital visit was a tightrope walk between hope and old wounds. I stayed by Julian's side, navigating his family's complex dynamics. His mother's warmth, his sister's quiet support, his father's stoic silence. But through it all, I saw Julian's resilience, the way he balanced his pain with his commitment to healing. One morning, we escaped to the beach, needing a break from the hospital's sterile walls. The sun was rising, painting the sky in shades of fire, and we walked barefoot along the shore, the waves lapping at our feet. Julian was quiet, his hand tight in mine. "I used to come here as a kid," he said finally. "Dreamed of being free, being me. Never thought I'd be here with someone like you." His voice was soft, but it carried the weight of 1,000 unspoken promises. I stopped, turning to face him. "Someone like me?" I teased, but my heart was racing. He smiled, his eyes bright with something new, certainty. "Someone who makes me believe in forever," he said. We kissed, the ocean our only witness, and I felt the last of my doubts dissolve. This was real. We were real. Back in Philly, we settled into a new rhythm. Julian's year in Chicago was winding down, and he decided to return, taking a local job with the same nonprofit. Our loft became a sanctuary again, filled with laughter, music, and the messy beauty of building a life together. But the past still lingered, not as a shadow but as a foundation. We talked about college more openly now, dissecting the pain, the growth, the moments that led us here. Julian framed one of my old sketches, the one of him from senior year, and hung it in our living room. A reminder, he said, of who we were and who we chose to be. Our friends noticed the change in us. At a dinner party, my best friend, Lena, pulled me aside. "You're different with him," she said. "Happier, braver." She was right. Loving Julian had made me bolder, not just in our relationship but in my art, my advocacy, my life. I started a new project, a graphic novel about queer love and redemption, pouring our story into every panel. Julian read the drafts, his eyes shining with pride. "You're telling our truth," he said, and I knew he meant more than the pages. But life, as always, had other plans. That fall, a scandal rocked the queer youth center where we volunteered. A board member had misused funds, threatening the programs we'd poured our hearts into. The community was furious, and Julian, now a program director, was caught in the crossfire. He worked late nights, rallying donors, reassuring families, trying to save what we'd built. I watched him carry the stress, his shoulders tense, his smiles rare. One night, I found him on the couch, staring at the ceiling. "What if we can't fix this?" he asked. "What if I fail them?" I sat beside him, taking his hand. "You won't," I said. "You're not alone in this. We'll fight for it together." And we did. I used my design skills to create a fundraising campaign, while Julian organized community forums to rebuild trust. We spent weeks rallying support, painting new murals, hosting open mics. The center survived, stronger than before, and I saw Julian's strength in a new light, not just as a partner, but as a leader. By winter, we were exhausted but closer than ever. One snowy evening, Julian suggested a walk through Fairmount Park. The world was quiet, blanketed in white, and we wandered hand in hand, our breath visible in the cold. At a clearing, he stopped, his face nervous but determined. "Marcus," he said, pulling a small box from his pocket. My heart stopped. "You've been my redemption, my home, my everything. Will you marry me?" Time froze. I saw the boy who'd hurt me, the man who'd healed me, and the future we could build. Tears stung my eyes as I nodded, unable to speak. He slipped a simple silver band on my finger, and we kissed, the snow falling around us like a promise. "Yes," I finally whispered. "Forever." Planning a wedding wasn't easy. My family embraced Julian, but his father was still distant, agreeing to attend but keeping his emotions guarded. We chose a spring wedding, wanting the renewal of the season to mirror our story. As we picked venues and argued over playlists, I realized how far we'd come. From enemies to partners, from pain to love. But the biggest test was yet to come, one that would force us to face our past head-on. Our wedding day dawned bright and warm, a perfect April morning in Philadelphia. The garden at Morris Arboretum was alive with cherry blossoms, their petals drifting like confetti. I stood under a floral arch, my heart pounding, watching Julian walk toward me in a cream suit that made him look like a dream. At 29, we were no longer the boys who'd clashed at Haverford. We were men who'd chosen love over pain, and today we'd seal that choice. The months leading up to the wedding had been a whirlwind. We'd planned every detail, from the jazz quartet to the Puerto Rican-inspired menu, wanting our day to reflect us, our cultures, our journey, our love. But the real challenge wasn't logistics. It was facing the ghosts of our past. A week before the wedding, Julian's father, Miguel, asked to meet us. I braced for tension, knowing their relationship was still fragile. We met at a quiet cafe in Center City. Miguel, A stern man with Julian's hazel eyes sat across from us, his hands folded tightly. "I haven't been a good father," he began, his voice low. "I didn't understand you, Julian. I still don't, fully. But I see how you love Marcus, and I see the man you've become. I'm proud." Julian's eyes filled with tears, and I squeezed his hand, my own throat tight. Miguel turned to me. "You've been good for him." "Thank you. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. A bridge built where a wall once stood." The wedding was a celebration of everything we'd fought for. Lena gave a speech that had everyone laughing and crying, recounting how she'd watched me go from hating Julian to loving him fiercely. Our vows were simple but raw. I promised to always see the real Julian, to fight for our love no matter what. He promised to be my home, my partner, my truth. When we kissed, the crowd cheered, and I felt like I was flying. But the true meaning of our story crystallized later that night, as we danced under string lights, the music soft and the world ours. Julian pulled me close, his breath warm against my ear. "You saved me, Marcus," he whispered, "not just from myself, but from a life half-lived." I shook my head, smiling. We saved each other. In the years since, we've built a life that feels like a miracle. We run a community arts program together, blending my designs with Julian's advocacy, creating spaces where queer youth can tell their stories. My graphic novel was published, a love letter to our journey, and Julian's work has expanded, touching lives across the country. We're not perfect. Arguments still flare, old insecurities sometimes surface, but we face them together, rooted in a love that's been tested and proven. Looking back, I see the arc of our story. Two boys, lost in their own fears, who hurt each other until they learned to heal. Julian was my worst nightmare in college, a mirror to my own doubts. But he's also my forever love story, proof that redemption is possible, that love can rewrite even the darkest chapters. As we stood on that dance floor, surrounded by the people who'd witnessed our transformation, I knew we'd written something extraordinary. A story not just of survival, but of thriving together.